And we have already taken the AP test. We took it May 5th, and there is about 3.5 weeks before the end of school. And so I have always had the opinion that we don't stop education just because the test happens. But I needed to teach them all the calculus before the test. So that sort of leaves me with a curriculum deficiency there, you know. But what we do, and I think this has become an amazing thing here at Anderson High School. It's a tradition now. Every year we do a calc project, and they're using not just their calculus skills, but everything that they've learned here at Anderson High School to try and make a difference in the community. I leave it totally open to them. They decide what they want to do their project on. They do all the work, and I pretty much unlock computer labs for them. Okay, that's pretty much how much I'm involved in this process. So it's an exciting time to see what they come up with, what they decide to do. The only parameters are that it has to impact the community in a positive way, that it's far-reaching, and that they do something they're passionate about. And this project today is definitely going to fit those parameters. So we have 3 presenters today, and they're excited to let you know about their project, which they are calling Stimulating Indiana, right? So pretty cool name too. So we have Jason Kapir, we have Mr. Bell, okay, and we have Mr. Straneycliffe. All right. So without further ado.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you to Anderson High School on behalf of the calculus class, and thank you for coming. Over the past year, we have been preparing ourselves not only for the AP test and for college in our future, but for our lives in the real world. As a class, we embarked upon a project that we believed would have a major impact on us, on the state of Indiana, on the United States of America, and on the entire world. That project is Stimulate Indiana. Maybe. Stimulating Indiana. I'd like to thank our sponsors, the Anderson Community School Corporation, the Anderson Federation of Teachers, and Muncie Chick-fil-A. STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Science is the study of the natural world, including the laws of nature associated with physics, chemistry, and biology, and the treatment or application of facts, principles, concepts, and conventions associated with these disciplines. Science is both a body of knowledge that has been accumulated over time and a process, scientific inquiry, that generates new knowledge. Technology. Technology, while not a discipline in the strictest sense, comprises the entire system of people, organizations, knowledge, processes, and devices that go into creating and operating technological artifacts, as well as those artifacts themselves. Engineering. Engineering is both a body of knowledge about the design and creation of human-made products and a process for solving problems. Engineering utilizes concepts from science and mathematics as well as technological tools. And mathematics. Mathematics is the study of patterns and relationships among quantities, numbers, and space. Unlike in science, where empirical evidence is sought to warrant or overthrow claims, claims in mathematics are warranted to arguments based on foundational assumptions.
I'm sure many of you have heard in the media and throughout the news about the so-called STEM crisis that the United States is facing. With the Cold War dominating much of our history, the United States has had a drive for scientific development, mathematical research, and technological progress. But with the end of the Cold War, the U.S. has lost its drive in these areas. And unfortunately, we have been unseated as the leader in the world in these areas. Such drive now belongs to countries such as India, China, Japan, and Pakistan. Data from the Program for International Student Assessment that is administered to 15-year-olds every 3 years by the OECD shows that the United States average score in math is being beaten by 22 other developed nations. And the score in science is being beaten by 15 other nations. The World Economic Forum has also determined that the United States ranks 52nd in math and science education, 27th for college students earning degrees in science and engineering, and 5th in overall competitiveness. So not only is it clear that the US is no longer a leader in the STEM subjects, we're also far from this, and we need to be taking steps to get in this direction again. Science and engineering account for only 31% of bachelor's degrees earned in the United States. Now this is compared to 51% of the degrees earned in China and 61% of the degrees earned in Japan. From 1980 to 2000, China increased its population of engineering graduates by 161%. South Korea increased their population of engineering graduates by 140%. Japan increased by 40%. Yet the United States had declined its population of engineering graduates by 20%. And this is a trend that is continuing today. The US is not helping itself counter the STEM crisis that is currently going on in the United States. The United States received more international students in the 2013-2014 school year than any other nation in the world. That's a total of 880,000 foreign students in our universities for that year. The number of outbound exchange students from the United States is also increasing. As a result, not enough of the STEM degrees being awarded from universities in the United States are going to Americans. For this reason, we can see that it is clear that educational opportunity in STEM is present in the United States, but our citizens are not taking advantage of this, and this is because there's a little bit of a lack of a strong system throughout all levels of education. Australia has recently studied successful STEM nations because it is going through a bit of a crisis itself, so it's examining other nations that they consider to be successful in STEM to model their own program after. The United States was not one of the nations examined by Australia. STEM programs considered were in countries that have taken national steps to improve education in STEM, such as a minimum requirement of a master's degree for all teachers, raises and incentives for teachers continuing education in their disciplines, making STEM engaging and fun, and introducing STEM to all population subgroups.
So one reason that the United States is falling behind in the global economy today is because our students, they're not reaching the high level of education that we need today. This could be attributed to the fact that they're just not going to college anymore as much as they need to. And as you can see up here, 28% of freshmen in high school aren't going to graduate on time. So that's not really okay because they're kind of falling behind and not really keeping up with the rest of their classmates. And also up there, 62% of 18 to 24-year-olds aren't going to college, which means they're not getting those skills that they need to compete in the workforce. They're kind of falling behind. We're not really having the people that these other countries that we were talking about. They're having everybody go to college. They're getting this high level of education. We're able to fill these STEM jobs, which we're not able to fill these jobs that we have today.
In addition to issues at the international level and at the national level, there are some issues that plague us at the state level. As we can see by this graph shows the hours per week spent on science in grades 1 through 4. So we can see that since 1994, the amount of time that elementary school students spend on science has declined. And not only has it declined, but Indiana used to be one of the leaders. It used to be above the national average. Indiana's average used to be above the national average. But since then, Indiana has declined to be below the national average, which means that Indiana is experiencing a drastic drop-off in STEM education time in the elementary schools. And without a proper foundation at a younger age, many students would not even think about going into a field that is related to that. So, and as students are not being educated, they do not go into a more STEM pathway, that troubles things a little bit, because STEM jobs, as of right now, are very plentiful, but the number of students entering STEM degrees and earning STEM degrees and taking a pathway that leads them to STEM, those numbers are declining. So that leaves us with a very large shortage of employees for the amount of jobs that we have. One way to inspire a greater interest in STEM is to support out-of-school activities. and real-world exposure to STEM work. Indiana can also promote initiatives that educate young people, especially those who are underrepresented in STEM fields. Teach them about the social and financial benefits that a STEM job can have. By the time students graduate college, only 43% of the original STEM majors earn a degree in STEM. That clearly represents our shortage of more quality programs at our higher education institutions in the state, and shows us that those 57% that we're losing to a wide variety of other places. And that next stat, 5.5% of students transfer into STEM, that 5.5% does not make up for the 57% lost, which means that our STEM programs at our colleges are not welcoming, they're not inviting enough, they're not thriving in a way that would attract students to the program, students at the college level to the program, which also causes the number of graduates to go down and the number of job openings to continue to increase as we have less employees to fill the jobs. 42% of students who left the STEM program said it was because of poor teacher instructional methods. Much of that can be attributed to the fact that we have a continuing cycle of our STEM issue. The teachers that are teaching our students now were taught themselves by teachers who may have been a little bit behind in STEM. And as the trend continues, students, as there's less and less STEM students, there'll be less and less quality STEM teachers. And as there's less STEM teachers, we must continue to bring STEM teachers from foreign countries, which also contributes to a lack of interest in the subject. If the teacher is not teaching in the same wavelength as the student, if the student and the teacher are not gelling together properly, it can be difficult for a student to understand a teacher and difficult for them to learn what they need to learn in order for them to attain a good education and be ready for their job in the real world.
Between 2011 and 2015, it is estimated that 1.7 million new STEM jobs were created in the United States. Yet, there are still vacancies in the job market, such as the 600,000 manufacturing-based jobs in the area of STEM that are going unfilled. Indiana currently has a shortage of STEM workers because some of the ways that employers are advertising these openings are not appealing to employees, which is pushing them to other states. Another possible reason is the high set of requirements that employers are looking for in their STEM employees. Most STEM employers are requiring a minimum of a bachelor's degree, of course, for STEM workers, and a 2 to 10 years of work experience in a professional STEM area. So as you can see on the graph, like I said, most of the job openings are concentrated in that area from 2 to 10 years of work experience. So that's about 90.1% of the job openings that exist. As a result, there are not a lot of job openings for entry-level students. 1.9% of job openings are for those with no experience, and 5.5% of job openings are catering to entry-level students. So therefore, Indiana does have a large need for qualified workers with science, engineering, and math and technical training, but currently we're not able to fill those because of the job experience requirements, and we have some ideas that could help facilitate employees gain some experience before they go out seeking a job. Indiana needs to fill 123,000 STEM-related jobs by the year 2018, and it is also estimated that about 930,000 job openings will be available in between 2008 and 2018 due to retirement from these STEM areas.
So one of the major benefits for the STEM employee is obviously a higher income, as you can see up here. The hourly income for a high school diploma or less can be up to almost 60% more. So they're going to be making almost 60% more if they go into a STEM field rather than just anything else. And the same goes for all the other levels of education. They're always going to be making at least 10% more than a non-STEM field. And as you can see, with some college or associate degree, they're making about 40% more per hour than somebody that's in non-STEM. And one of the major things here is, this is an issue After graduation, people can't find jobs. College graduates, they get out of college and they can't really find a job in the major that they chose. So what's happening is, we see up here, is 62.1% of college graduates get a job that does not, only 62% get a job that matches their degree. Along with that, only 27.3% of college graduates find a job that matches their major. And the difference between these two is, say you could have a degree in engineering, but a major in, say, computer engineering. So a major is more specific. So a lot of these people, they're coming out and they're not really finding a job in what they get. And with our proposal, we want people to stay on track and find jobs in something that they're actually like learning about in college and making sure they're just being successful in their life. So a concern that we have right now for the United States, we're not filling the STEM jobs that we have open. The way that we've been countering this in the past is we have foreign students come into the United States and they get an education here, and for the past they've been staying here and filling those jobs that we need. But what we've been seeing, especially with Taiwan, as they develop, their students come here, they get an education, and then they go back home to help their country develop. So this simple fix, it's not working anymore. We need to change this in order to stay on the right track. At our current pace, the United States will not be able to fill its projected 1.2 million computing jobs that are going to be created between 2010 and 2020. And yeah, if we don't fix this soon, the United States, we might lose our competitive edge in the STEM world and in the global economy.
So we've listed a number of concerns that are here in the United States and the state of Indiana relating to STEM. So we have established a comprehensive plan to increase Indiana's output of in-state STEM degree earners and employees. Our proposal aligns with much of the Indiana Department of Education's current STEM initiative plan that involve the 4 cooperative entities as seen here, or the components as identified by the plan, involving the Department of Education, businesses, higher education, and K-12 schools. Our proposal further focuses on higher education and the establishment of a homegrown STEM workforce here in Indiana. We've developed reforms at 2 levels, the K-12 level and the college education level. So starting with some of the reforms that we're proposing at the K-12 level are teacher education requirements. It's a given that if Indiana wants to produce better educated, and more well-rounded students, there needs to be better equipped teachers to help them excel at the highest level possible. The requirements for teacher licensure in Indiana are currently as follows: a bachelor's degree, completion of a teaching program, passing the Praxis 2 tests in health and physical education with a minimum score of 158 in the health, valid Red Cross or American Heart Association certification in CPR and the Heimlich maneuver, suicide prevention training, and submitting their licensing fees. Additionally, under current Indiana licensing rules, passing the REPA exam is a requirement for all individuals applying for their first practitioner licensing in teaching. REPA is a pedagogy and development exam covering the strategies of teaching such as methodology, classroom management, student development and diversity, learning processes, learning environment, instructional planning assessments, and the professional environment as a teacher. While these REPA exams are necessary, there should be more of a general knowledge for all teachers, knowledge test for all teachers to pass. Teachers need to be more knowledgeable on other subjects besides the subject that they are specifically teaching, math being a specific area of concern because it is so fundamental to everyday situations. Through observation, it is seen that many teachers do not have a basic understanding of math, especially at the elementary level. And so this is a pretty big problem. All teachers should be required to have a basic understanding of math. So we are proposing that passing the Praxis 2 tests for teaching foundations, mathematics content knowledge, and mathematics pedagogy should be requirements that are added to Indiana's teaching licensure. In an effort to produce teachers well-rounded in all subjects, passing the Praxis 2 exam in reading and language arts middle school science and multi-subject elementary education should also be added as requirements. Currently, the state of Maine is leading the nation in these efforts by requiring teachers to pass all 3 of these tests with minimum scores of 157 in reading and language arts, 150 in middle school science, and 157 in elementary education. But the goal is for Indiana to become the best educated state. So we are proposing a little bit of a higher score, minimum score to pass these tests, which would be 170. There are also some other reforms that can be made. House Bill number 1222 is currently on Indiana's floor. The bill aims to establish 5 regional STEM development and education networks. These education support networks aim to link schools in the STEM disciplines, provide STEM professional development, evaluate schools for teacher skills, teacher pedagogical content knowledge, and student achievement. And of course, organizing these 3 elements between the 5 proposed regional centers. Our proposal for elementary and middle school education reforms will align well with this bill currently on Indiana's floor. There's currently little requirement for teaching STEM in elementary school, and many teachers just glaze over these subjects, not even teaching math and science on a daily or maybe even weekly basis. Beginning at the 1st grade level, teachers should be required to teach math and science every single day. A specific curriculum should be implemented at the lower levels so that a basic understanding of STEM can be made in the early years. This may mean reforming some of Indiana's current state standards, because the earlier STEM is introduced, the more information that can be taught at the higher level, and the more likely it is that STEM will have an impact on a student's career pathway choice. Curriculum introduced at an early age should include learning that teaches what exactly STEM is and what exactly it means to think in a STEM manner, as well as introducing them to basic projects that will put basic STEM knowledge into use. STEM education should be furthered at the middle school level, and we are proposing that a certain time be set aside each day for STEM career exploration. And one of the ways to accomplish this would be requiring a 1 semester long course for all middle school students in STEM career exploration. So we're proposing that that should be added to the middle school curriculum. We also think it is a beneficial idea to separate the students at the middle school level who are excelling in math and science, so they're not being restricted in their educational growth by students in their own age that are not quite on the same level as them.
In addition to reforms at the elementary and middle school level, it's also essential that we get points across at the high school level. Currently in Indiana, the basic diploma, not the general diploma, the basic diploma is the Core 40 diploma. And the Core 40 diploma requires 6 credits in both math and science. We propose that in order to create more well-rounded students, students that are more able to compete in the world and be better parts of society, we propose that every student be required to take 8 credits in both math and science. We would keep the required classes that are currently required in both math and science, and math being Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and Geometry, and in science being biology. And then we would allow the students to choose their own path to STEM success and find themselves in their science and math classes, find what they really like and enjoy, and get to know themselves in a STEM sense. In addition to the basic Core 40 diploma, it would also be beneficial to make some changes to the Core 40 with Academic Honors diploma. Also, in order to create more well-rounded students, students that are more prepared for college, some students that can graduate with an Academic Honors diploma that are, top of the class, maybe seen as being a little bit more academically able than regular students. They may not be able to function very well in a college setting because they've not had a more rigorous schedule in high school. I propose that we would add a requirement of pre-calculus in math, a more challenging math course in order to prepare them, and also an advanced physics or an advanced chemistry, a math class that would also better prepare them for their success after high school. We would also look to adding a professional development day, one day out of the year that is devoted specifically towards STEM literacy, becoming better in STEM, making sure that all students have a greater understanding of STEM opportunities in the state and STEM opportunities just overall. Another thing that is essential to success for high school students is an exposure to STEM work while they are in high school. And the typical way, or one of the most effective ways of doing that, is through internships and co-op programs. In Indiana, at the college level, which would serve to be a good model, at the college level, Purdue University, being a focused STEM college, has a very good intern and co-op program. They offer anywhere from 12 to 22 months of practical work experience before their students graduate, so that they can gain a competitive edge once they do graduate. Various majors from the college go to different local STEM employers so that they can gain some knowledge and become more, focused and more knowledgeable about the workplace once they graduate. These students can be paid anywhere from $2,600 to $4,000 a month, also aiding them not only in their, whatever they need at the time, but also aiding them in continuing their financial, helping them through college as they need it. It should also be noted that when Jason was talking about needing work experience for a job, many of these internships are considered by Indiana STEM corporations to count as work experience, and they can aid a student in getting a job because they have this experience working with a STEM type organization. In Indiana for high schoolers, the premier internship program is called InternNet. Indiana InternNet is a matchmaking service for companies looking for interns and for people looking for internships. The site requires that students and companies be registered so that they can be easily matched to each other. The internships in this program are paid for by various employers across Indiana and last 8 weeks during any time throughout the year. Employers can be reimbursed up to 50% of the intern's hourly wages by a program called EARN, which is the Employment Aid Readiness Network. EARN helps those with financial needs in getting an internship, and they also reimburse the companies for the internships that they are providing. Currently, as it stands, EARN can support 650 interns with their funds of $831,719. By boosting that to $1 million, by boosting their funds to $1 million, EARN could support 200 more jobs. That's 200 more people involved in STEM, 200 more STEM jobs, 200 people better prepared for the STEM workplace. To influence more students to follow STEM majors, InternNet could become a STEM-only site, or they could develop a sister site that would work specifically toward aiding students towards STEM programs. Altogether, employees are looking for more people to go into STEM majors and STEM jobs following that. Developing interest at a younger age by setting up co-op opportunities and internships can help more people get interested. And it can also provide these students with experience that would be very valuable to them and very useful to them once they enter the STEM workforce.
As we mentioned before, some beneficial changes could also be made at the college level. Part of the problem we addressed earlier is that not enough students are choosing STEM majors in the United States, and we're not putting out a large number of STEM qualified workers as compared to other nations of the world. We're proposing a loan program that would be implemented for in-state STEM majors, and this is outlined in a bill in the appendix of your proposals. We're proposing this because not a lot of students are going into STEM majors, as I have mentioned, and it would be set up as follows. A standard student loan would be issued to any student pursuing a STEM major at a public Indiana college. So this will encourage some students who are kind of on the fence about choosing a STEM major or going into another field. This will encourage them to choose that STEM major because they will be receiving a loan for it. The loan would cover 100% of tuition, so if not already enough of an incentive for them to major in STEM, this is an even bigger one. The student in question must pursue and complete their 2 or 4 year STEM major, because we do not want to be giving these loans to students who will try to start in STEM and then go to something else just so they can get their college education paid for. We want to increase the output of STEM majors, so we're requiring that they complete that degree. The student in question, like I said, cannot switch to another major within their 2 or 4 years just so they can receive the loan. And once the student in question has completed his or her degree, they will have a 1-year period to attain a job related to the STEM field here in Indiana. The student in question must then hold that occupation for a minimum of 3 years, at which time the loan will be completely forgiven. Now, these stipulations are because we want this program to benefit the state of Indiana. We're implementing this so that these STEM majors will stay in Indiana. So we are increasing our qualified workforce in STEM and not giving our students to other states. If these conditions are not met, the student in question will pay the entirety of the loan plus an interest rate beginning at the time that the conditions were broken. Now, we mentioned a 1-year grace period to find a job. Let's say that after that period, the student found a job, then their payments would be canceled. They would not have to make additional payments to the ones that they already have made. So if they do find a job after that 1-year period and stay in it for 3 years here in Indiana, that would be forgiven from that time on. The funds needed for the loan would be countered by increasing the tuition for all students at Indiana's 31 public universities by a certain percentage depending on factors such as the in-state STEM students and tuition rates at a certain university. The percent increase can be found with this equation that we have come up with. The number of in-state students times the current in-state tuition divided by the total revenue from current tuition minus the number of in-state STEM students times the current in-state tuition. So in other words, the school's tuition revenue from in-state STEM students divided by the school's total tuition revenue, not accounting for those in-state STEM majors. As written in the proposals you have, we estimated that the percent increases would fall between 7 and 12%, but we have found with some universities that percent would not have to be as high. Take IU Bloomington, for example. IU Bloomington currently has a total enrollment of about 47,000. That's composed of about 27,000 in-state students and about 20,000 out-of-state and international students. The current in-state tuition is about $10,000, and for all out-of-state residents, it is about $33,000. So this combines for a total current revenue from tuition of about $934 million. And by using the equation, we have found that by just increasing all tuition at IU Bloomington by just 3.1%, that's only about $400 for the in-state majors, about $1,000 for the out-of-state and international students, that an additional revenue from tuition would be created, an additional revenue of $29 million. Now, you notice this matches the $29 million that is the cost of tuition for all of the in-state STEM majors at IU Bloomington. To ensure avoiding a predicament that the tuition rate at a university were increased by a tremendous amount, there would be a cap placed at 15% increase. And so if this cap were to be met, that would mean that there is a high interest in STEM majors. That means that there's a lot of students going into STEM majors, thus lowering the demand for STEM workers in the state of Indiana. So if this were to happen at an Indiana college, amendments may have to be made to reduce the amount of tuition from 100%, thus reducing a little bit of the incentive to major in STEM. So in a way, the system is kind of working itself if we reach a point where we are meeting our STEM needs. We don't want to overproduce at that point. So that is what the cap of 15% would help counter. Any excess funds created by the tuition would be distributed directly back to the students, proportionate to the amount of enrollment at that university and the percentage that their tuition were increased by. So with this loan program, it is hoped that Indiana will encourage students to major in STEM and encourage more STEM graduates, produce more STEM graduates that will stay in Indiana, help benefit the state of Indiana by working STEM jobs and bringing more corporations and STEM corporations to the state because of the qualified workforce here in Indiana.
In addition to this loan program, and in order to keep everything back to benefiting the state, keep all the benefits in Indiana, there'd be a cap placed on the number of foreign students that were allowed to attend these universities with these same STEM requirements. This is in order to make sure that all of the Indiana taxpayers' money that goes to funding these public universities goes to Indiana students who are, born and bred in Indiana, and they look forward to taking these STEM loans and then going back and working there minimum 3 years or even longer so that they can continue to benefit the state throughout the entire process. A search for diversity is often found with universities in accepting foreign students, but America itself is called the Great American Melting Pot, for that for a reason. Diversity is easy to be found in most Indiana high schools, including ours. We are a very diverse class. Our calculus class is very diverse, and all of our students plan on attending college in some way or another. So that a shortage of what would be seen as diversity, or a shortage of students that would be aiding in the education of others based on their backgrounds, could be met by Indiana students.
In the long term, these proposals would hope to increase, like I keep saying, the output of STEM majors in Indiana, the output of STEM qualified employees, and it is found that more STEM jobs circulates money around the state and the nation in a more effective and efficient manner. With an increase in scientists, mathematicians, engineers, and other workers proficient in STEM, the U.S. could advance in science and technological developments and potentially put us at the world's forefront once again. Unemployment rates are likely to decrease because the unemployment rate for STEM majors or STEM employees is 5% as compared to 10% for most other fields. Currently, 58.1% of Indiana's STEM workforce is concentrated in the areas of the healthcare fields, but this program will diversify Indiana's STEM employment. There's a projected increase of 9 million STEM jobs between 2012 and 2022, that's for the United States. And Indiana could potentially expand upon this number and lead the nation in percentage of STEM jobs available. Our plan will generate more STEM workers in Indiana. Existing and new STEM businesses will be attracted to the state of Indiana because of our qualified workforce that exists. Right now, most of Indiana's STEM jobs are concentrated in the Indianapolis and Carmel area, but if this program were to be implemented, more STEM metro areas would pop up across the state due to the increase in interest for STEM corporations and companies to come to the state of Indiana and locate or base their corporations in Indiana. So we could see more STEM areas pop up besides just the Indianapolis-Carmel area here in the state of Indiana in the long term.
So there's a program today that exists known as Project Lead the Way. This is a program that allows students to see kind of what STEM is. Like I'm in one of the classes, aerospace engineering. It helps students know what STEM is, they get a feel for engineering, and they get an interest in it at a younger age. It can really help with elementary students as well. Along with this, we also believe that there could be STEM expos to help augment the process of our proposal. These could kind of show a hands-on approach of what is going on with STEM, what kind of jobs they create, why it's so important. Because I don't know if you guys saw the video before this, but it showed that STEM's really important. It created things like real-life robots, social media, all of that comes from STEM. Just about everything we know today. All your cell phones sitting on the tables, they all came from STEM. So, I mean, we need expos to show people like how important this really is, get them an interest in these fields.
Our plan as it impacts the state is entirely beneficial. There could be, without seeing the plan put into place, there are no perceived negatives of this plan. And with benefits towards not only the state, which we've gone over, but also towards the employees, to the STEM majors themselves. 63% of associate degrees in STEM earn more than those with bachelor's degrees in non-STEM occupations. 47% of bachelor's degrees in STEM occupations earn more than PhDs in non-STEM occupations. The overall income of the entire STEM population is greater than the non-STEM population. If students continue to pursue degrees and careers in fields other than STEM-related areas, the United States will find it difficult to compete in the global economy. Furthermore, the U.S. will not be able to meet its future workforce needs in the STEM areas. The U.S. on its own needs 400,000 new graduates in STEM fields by next year, which is a number that we are not on track to meet with current graduation rates in that. The graph, as the graph illustrates, you clearly see a trend in the greater incomes at the top with our STEM degrees and the smaller incomes at the bottom with our non-STEM degrees, including the close to equal incomes of an associate's degree in the mechanical engineering is very close to the master's degree in English language and literature, showing that a choice in the right field could mean hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars over a lifetime. The greatest advancements in our society come from medicine and mechanics and many things, and all the people that have made those great advancements were interested in or studied in a STEM field. Although still relatively small in number, the STEM workforce has an outsized impact on the nation's competitiveness, economic growth, and overall standard of living. Analysis of data from the U.S. Census Bureau's American Community Survey and Current Population Survey provide new insights into the growing STEM workforce that is central to our economic vitality. STEM jobs are the jobs of the future. They are essential for developing our technological innovation and our competitiveness on a global level. If anyone has any questions at this time, the three of us and our representatives from our subcommittees and our calculus class would be more than happy to field all of your questions and answer them to the best of our abilities. Yes, Mr. Bowman.
I'll start off. Thank you very much for this wonderful presentation. Congratulations to all three of you and Mr. Z. I'm not sure where he is, but congratulations.
Thank you, Ron.
To you too for again a great project that you put together here. Everything that you did and said was fabulous, including your tie, by the way.
Well, thank you.
As a graduate of Anderson High School in 1970. But I shouldn't have said the year, should I? Anyway, but yeah, well, yeah, takes on the note. Anyway, he's young, actually. I agree with your comment. I'm sorry, your name is?
Quentin.
Quentin, I agree with your comment. No perceived negatives in your proposals, but I see some challenges. Yes. So I want to ask you about a couple of those. And by way of sort of prefacing my questions, or big question, I guess, that I have for you. You include two very exciting, very good proposals that came before us down to the Indiana General Assembly this year. House Bill 1222 and Senate Bill 259. And I was sitting here looking at these thinking, gosh, I sort of remember a little bit about Senate Bill 259 because I think it passed the Senate, went to the House where unfortunately it didn't get a hearing. And then House Bill 1222, if I look at it correctly, it looks like it did get a hearing in the House, then was recommitted to Ways and Means because of a financial aspect involved in it. And it looked like it didn't get a hearing then in Ways and Means. So that tells me that probably the big hurdle you're going to have in trying to get this as a policy for the state of Indiana, and I'm sorry, I look at it pretty focused in terms of what will, a legislator be thinking about on this proposal, is how we pay for it. And your proposal, if I understand, is we increase tuition at all the institutions of higher learning in the state of Indiana. Am I understanding that correctly? My question to you is, I would challenge you to say, let's find multiple funding sources for this. You've done a great job in identifying the problem. We don't have enough, emphasis on STEM throughout the whole education system. Hence, we're not graduating enough, STEM graduates. And then we're not keeping them here in the state of Indiana when we do it. You propose some solutions for that. But all this is going to cost money, and certainly when it comes to the idea of the loans that you talked about, and I talked to Nathan about the loan, correct? And that's a tremendous idea, that loan forgiveness, and the idea of 3 years, stay here, you get them here for 3 years, they're likely to stay for 30 or whatever. But that costs money. And so was there any thought about sharing the burden of that? And why don't we, if this is such a great goal for the state of Indiana, and I think it is, it seems to me we ought to ask, number one, the state put some more money and skin into the game, right? And not just ask that it be increased tuition, because I can tell you that, at least as a practical matter, if this matter were to go to the Appropriations Committee in the Senate, you've got a chairman there who is very concerned about the cost of tuition for students throughout the state of Indiana, and is going to be very hesitant to the idea of raising tuitions, even for it. We're going to have to really make a good case for why you would want to consider raising tuitions to pay for this program. Was there any thought in asking, number one, just the state overall to put more money into this project, which would be a challenge, but hey, state budget's all about priorities, and if we recognize Indiana's falling behind graduating STEM graduates to attract employers, STEM employers to come to Indiana because they know they're going to find a qualified workforce, maybe we ought to ask the state of Indiana to put more money into this project. Then secondly, what about the private sector here? I mean, I know we're going to ask them to hire these people once they get out, but was there any thought in looking at the existing STEM industry, the Eli Lilly's, Cook Implements, all the medical device companies, in the Wabash area, I think it is. You identify the Carmel area as being a cluster of our current businesses for that. Was there any thought in asking them to put some sort of commitment into this whole thing?
Right, so answering both of those kind of questions together, we did consider, looking to the state level for more appropriations, monetary appropriations to implement this program. But like you said, we did anticipate some challenges with this and getting the state completely on board with that idea. And we also did consider having the STEM corporations make contributions, because really they're just benefiting themselves. And so by contributing to the loan program, that would greatly help that. But thinking about the challenges that would be at the state level, we proposed the tuition raises because that would cost the state virtually nothing, because it is coming from just the universities. It's generated from the universities itself. So to run the program, there wouldn't be any cost, because all of the cost of these loans is generated within the university and through the students. So I think to augment that, our proposal, I think that if we did get more appropriations from the states, that percentage of tuition increase could be significantly lower than what we estimated to be 7 to 12%, but like we said at IU, it was only 3.1%. But I think getting the state to contribute some funds to this would be greatly helpful, and as well as getting support from corporations like you and the STEM corporations in Indiana, because it will just be a benefit to themselves. So yes.
I have a question, but sorry, you did.
Well, I was just going to Tim's point, there are, like Subaru, some of us educators from Madison County went to the Subaru private industry. They indeed basically finance college degree educations, kind of starting with a 2-year program where they have interns. What the interns make covers their cost of their 2-year degree. Then they go to work for Subaru, and they can complete a 4-year degree at Purdue at no cost to that employee, because it's a benefit to them. So some of those models for sharing the cost of education with a commitment to work in industry here in Indiana exist. We just don't have that replicated throughout various industries, but to your point, it's an incentive. You're here, you go to school here, you're employed here, your degree's paid here. So I think it's worth looking at to kind of help your strengthen this.
Many of those programs do exist. So if the state of Indiana feels that this loan program were to be one of the most effective solutions, maybe some of those funds for that can be concentrated in the loan program, as well as still continuing those jobs and internships, but kind of focusing our finances towards implementing the loan program between the companies and the state.
You know, every year I come here and I'm just in awe each year, and I think, wow, that was good. This year is really the best as far as thought-provoking and very pertinent discussion. I want to applaud all of you that were involved in the research and obviously the presentation. But I have a question that goes to motivation. Not disputing any of the information you provided as far as where the country and the state ranks with our STEM curriculum participation. But let me ask this. What, in your opinion, or what did you find, would be the greatest influence on Hoosier students choosing to concentrate in STEM curriculum? I mean, the presentation is kind of at the collegiate end where somebody makes a choice because of finances. But is there something that you found before that that you think would help?
Like we mentioned, we think a lot of this kind of encouragement will be seen at the K through 12 level, because right now, not only are students struggling to make the choice to major in STEM, but it's because they don't have a lot of exposure to STEM. They don't have the necessary exposure that they need. And so STEM it's scary to them. They don't want to major in it. So more exposure, like we said, beginning at the first grade level, teaching math and science every day, generating that interest early, showing them, creating a good basis of their education in STEM so that they continue to pursue that at a higher level once they reach middle school and high school. And this will thus encourage them to be not so scared away from STEM majors, and then at that point, if they are between a STEM major and liberal arts or history, whatever else they're thinking about, they will be guided towards that STEM major because of the incentive.
So you think that the largest influence is the classroom environment in those years of a student's life versus other things?
I do believe, because that foundation or that interest has to be sparked before the college level, before they're making that career pathway choice. If they don't have any knowledge in it, they're not going to choose a STEM major. And even at the high school level, that may be a little bit too late, because at the high school level, if they don't have a good foundation in STEM, they're going to be not doing well at the high school level. So starting that early and continuing that through the K through 12 education would be the best solution, we feel.
I was interested in a couple of proposals for teachers and for students. And I tweeted out, listening to the best and brightest from Anderson High School here, from all you, you've done an excellent job on your research and your presentation. My question is, you guys are a little biased. You're obviously, like I said, the best and brightest, and you all are in STEM. You know, you've reached calculus. What did you run this by your peers that are not in calculus, and kind of what would their feelings be about you have to have 8 semesters of mathematics, you know, and running it by some of your teachers that said, oh, we're going to raise your score to get past the praxis so you can even get your license. What do you think your peers that are non-math people might be saying?
I think Miss Innes is very eager to answer that question. So.
I know that we discussed talking about for the math, because I totally understand that some people they feel like they're not math, science people. They have other passions and other things, and that's what makes the world so great, that we can accomplish all these things, because people have different things that they can achieve that. But we had talked about doing different things where just because you take 8 semesters doesn't mean that the people who aren't that great and excelling at math are getting the pre-calculus classes. Like, we can have different classes that kind of set up. Although they're not exactly like such an advanced math, they still get that general like foundation to where they do understand, and they can like kind of apply that to whatever, because math and science and every other field, like, they kind of cope with each other. So if we had classes that weren't exactly like advanced classes, but you still get that like generally, because if you spend a year and you don't even touch math or go over it, then you lose that much over it when you go into college, and you're going to have to go back and like you're going to have to take a like math class, even if you are extra major in college, just to get that general thing. So if you kind of stop the momentum of having that like math or science or anything, then the ball drops and you're kind of just put in a place where it's harder to get back in the rigorous course of college or whatever else you're trying to do in your career. So.
Maddie, Mr. Thompson, you have something to say?
I do, because I have to go.
Okay.
We have a marathon negotiation meeting coming up, starting at 10. Echo what Mayor Smith said. You guys have done a great job. This takes a lot of in-depth study and understanding. So what are we doing? Because it doesn't matter. If we have few people graduating right now, using Project Lead the Way as one example, then what are we going to do at the lower level? So at Anderson Community Schools next year, we're going to have, for the first time, a high ability magnet school. Now, does that address just math and science? No. But what it does, it gives kids opportunities to explore that in an area where enrichment is the focus. Secondly, we've added, and will continue to try and add, Project Lead the Way positions at the middle school, as you addressed, and at the high school level. The problem is, as Mr. Z could tell you, is finding the candidates. We even contacted Project Lead the Way, and there are very few candidates graduating in the state of Indiana. So that would be a challenge to you, because we have to encourage our own to go out and then come back. So, but great job. I would also suggest that you guys do this presentation to the State Board of Education and maybe even the General Assembly, because I think that a lot of people can learn a lot from what you just were able to very well communicate. It's better coming from students who are going out who are going to lead this country instead of all these white-haired people like us in the trim. Okay, that's very important that you guys understand that. And so maybe, since I know you two will be back next year, we'll have you do that presentation to your local board first.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson.
Great job, by the way. Thank you. I apologize, I got to leave.
Going back to Mr. Reed's education, Mr. Reed's question on our peers, I've noticed that many of our peers will only do things education-wise because they have to. So if it is a requirement for 8 credits, they will do it because they have to in order to graduate. And so right now I think math and science is a requirement that you take it each year at the high school level, but requiring those 8 credits, I think that if, like I said, it's a requirement, they will do it, and adding pre-calculus to the academic honors diploma what is happening now is a lot of students aren't interested in pre-calc because they don't need to take it. They're thinking, well, I'm not going to major in math, I'm not going to pursue STEM, why do I need pre-calc? So they just won't take it. But they do need that exposure because many majors, even if they're not in STEM, require pre-calculus or calculus at the college level. So an introduction to that in the high school level will be greatly beneficial to them, and just down the road it'll do so much for them.
The idea isn't to force them into math classes. Like some of our peers obviously aren't going to like that. They're not going to want to take a bunch of math classes. So we were saying pre-calc was more of like an academic honors type thing. Like not everyone's going to have to do it, but if we can at least introduce them to like geometry, trig, and things like that, like maybe they'll get more interested in it and want to keep going with math and science and like physics and chemistry and more of that too.
Once again, emphasizing starting at that elementary level.
I think that in that part of our proposal would be one of the best parts for the state to take effect. If, without our work at the younger levels, we'll never get anyone that wants to be in our loan program. So if the state was to take into account, the STEM Expo and integrating Project Lead the Way into the younger grades and helping them become more interested in STEM, if the state could do their part of, stimulating that, then we could continue to progress, and then once they've reached the college level, then their own tuition would pay for the rest of it.
A little background on that, we just finished certifying STEM schools, and the vast majority were elementary schools, and there are some neat things happening in the elementary schools with STEM, so it is in the works and is happening, but it's slow. It is a very systemic.
Will the focus on STEM courses decrease offerings in areas of affectionately called liberal arts courses, music, art, drama, some of the courses that are being eliminated in schools now? How will that play out, or will it play out at all?
Well, with what we're proposing, we're not anticipating a large diversion of funds at the K-12 level to the STEM education. I don't believe it's going to have such a huge impact on the finances that more of that will be happening, more of the finance will be taken away. And what we're proposing, I do not think it's too drastic that they're only focusing on STEM. It's just a little bit more of a push in STEM, and just a little more emphasizing its importance as well as with the other majors, because right now I don't think we're struggling to fill the other majors in the other areas, and we're not producing jobs in those areas. So the emphasis on STEM is just because we're having issues in the nation, but we do not feel that this will take away from other areas. Well,
I think it is an interesting concept, though. If STEM needs to be made a priority so that we can remain competitive, does that mean we have to lengthen our school day a little bit? Does it mean we have some kind of mandatory enrichment opportunities? Does it mean that instead of my third grader never cracking her science book, that she completes her science book? Because those things aren't done. And I love the fact that you're saying we need exposure to know what are the careers within this science, technology, engineering, and math. I know from having high school students, they're clueless. They have a certain perceived idea of what that means. And I'm like, there's tons of stuff. Come with me to some of these, you'll see what these cool and amazing things that you don't have to be sitting in a seat all day long staring at numbers. So I think to your point, that's a great place to focus and think about how do we increase exposure and time spent, even at the expense of lengthening a day or something.
right, and a lot of our actual proposal didn't focus on the public awareness, and I know that's a big thing that the Indiana Department of Education is focusing on with their STEM initiative plan. We did propose, not in our actual proposal, but just as an idea, the STEM expos, which I think will get them to see, well, I have all these things, I have all these computers, my cell phone, and everything, but I don't think people are realizing how that's happening and what they can do to help facilitate that and further advance that. So people just don't realize the big impact that STEM has and the employment opportunities in STEM. So not only increasing awareness for students, but in the public as in general, because that'll feed over into the students when adults in public are more aware.
You're probably right there.
So awareness in society is a step that also needs to be taken to overflow into
One other body that I would add to your list of influential, key players in this whole thing is the Board of Higher Education, because you're proposing also a pretty radical change in terms of preparing teachers, correct? Which means then we need a change in the curriculum for teachers or would-be teachers. And so I think, again, it just goes back to the great job you've done here, because what you've presented, I think, is a pathway to a fairly comprehensive solution to the problem that you've put out there. But it is comprehensive, and so that means you're going to have a lot of, very important agencies and bodies that you're going to have to convince to work together to accomplish what you want to do. But it all goes back to the idea of this being a priority for our state.
And they did contact the commission.
Oh, did they? Mr. Ryan, good job. Good job.
The idea was for, we're not going to try to ask the state for every bit of money.
Right.
That's the reason
that's
we
smart.
talked about increasing tuition and setting up programs to help raise that money.
Right.
But obviously, any kind of contribution that we can get is going to help.
Yeah, you got to ask. So
Yeah.
definitely do that.
Yes.
So, as Senator Lennon mentioned, you've come up with a fairly comprehensive proposal. What, in your view, needs to happen next? What are the steps that need to occur in order to begin pushing this forward for consideration by the various people and agencies that have been identified here? What would you do next?
Out of our proposals, I think a good first step to take would be that awareness and that exposure that we've been talking about. Because without that exposure, the loan program, while it'll be effective, it won't be reaching as many students as it could potentially be reaching. So the teacher education requirements, the reforms to that, I think it all starts there when the teachers are more well-rounded, more educated in all subjects. With more STEM education, they can project that onto the students and teach their students more about STEM. So teacher requirements, I would say, then, which will lead into the exposure starting at a lower level, the elementary level, all the way through the system. Then once they reach the college level, they can take advantage of the
Mr. Kabir, I think he misunderstood the question. He's asking you, where are you going with this project? Like, are you gonna present it on the floor? Are you gonna present? Where are you gonna go with this next? That's what he's asking.
The idea was that we could pick up some state legislature to maybe present this to the General Assembly or whoever it needs to be presented to, because obviously we can't do it ourselves. But that's where some of you guys come in to help us keep it moving, get it, if you like it enough to actually adopt it and see if we can make it a little more presentable.
So,
Well, what I'd like to do is first congratulate and applaud Mr. Z and his class. And this shows what our best and brightest are about here in Anderson. And you can see that they propose such a complex concept that it's brought about thoughtful conversation. So, circling the wagons back around to the students, this is what college and career readiness gets you. And the whole idea is to launch students out there, put them on a gateway to college and career readiness, and by the time they're in high school, having them on that pathway to where they need to be. So I think, as Mr. Thompson said, one of the things two of these young men will do, and some of these students will still be here, is be able to present this again to our school board, because our school board is excellent. We have a school board who listens to us. They listen to everybody who's involved. And it's not like that everywhere. So I would highlight some things with the students to make sure they understand what the complexity index means, what state funding means as far as education is concerned, how that changed. I would explain to them what the 30A is and how we'll be receiving multiple funding for the first time next year at semester and to start the year. And then also the certification costs of what it takes to be to get PLTW up and running, because you have to have labs, you have to have computers that meet a certain specification. In order for that to take place, they have to refine their presentation, and it's an excellent one, but they need to take those points to our board, because our board has to support spending the money to see where that's going to go. We have to have labs in all 3 areas. If you're going to do launch as PLTW in the lower grades, there's funding that has to come internally, and that doesn't necessarily always come from the state. If you're going to put Gateway in and have that be part of your middle school program, obviously we have to outfit certain labs for that to take place. In order for us to run successfully between here and our D26 campus, we would need funding to be able to do that just to get us certified and up to spec. So I would like to have an opportunity to talk with our students. We do have a school board member present who's really good with numbers. We have very good students here who are deep thinkers. They're innovative, and you see this creative idea that has come across, and then have them be able to present that information, and then again with the aim of presenting it again with their larger goal in mind. But it's backward design. They began with where they want to end up, and they laid that out there. Now I think as adults it's our job to scaffold beneath them to help them get back to the great idea that they've come up with. So again, thank you for your hard work.
So Red, going back to your question, sir, we do hope to pursue this project further. Like Mr. Brandon said, this was just the beginning, just establishing some of the avenues for that. So we have gotten many good suggestions of where to go next. So I think plans with the school board sound like very, very feasible and very, very certain that that will happen for us. And we'd like to take it even further, like Mr. Lane and some of the other guests mentioned, taking it to the floor of the Senate and the floor of the House, and the Commission for Higher Education. And what the goal of this proposal was is to kind of establish some avenues to make that possible and kind of get the ideas out to some of our very distinguished guests here, so that they would hopefully be able to assist us with making those contacts.
Can you get me additional copies of your proposal? I've made a list of about 7 people already that I'd like to distribute this to. So, yeah, that's too much of a, I don't want to hog all of them, but including Teresa Lovers, Glenda Ritz, Senator Grooms, who sponsored the Senate bill you included, who's the only pharmacist, I think, in the General Assembly. I think would find this very interesting. Both chairs of the education committees in the House and the Senate. So I think there's a way of getting this thing going. I mean,
and of course,
This is our goal. We wanted, obviously, our school board to adopt it and do something with it, but even more, we didn't want to take 10 years to get it to your level, to get it moving in the state. We didn't want to have to start here, start small, get it moving, and then it just ended up taking forever. But that's why we invited you.
I also am more than willing to see if there is. I know the interim committee on education is going to meet this summer. I think they were charged with certain topics already. I don't know if there's any room to include something like this, yet this summer, but I'll take a look at that.
One of the groups you need to meet with and addresses what you had spoke of with the funding. There's actually a very, very strong STEM network in Indiana through Purdue University, the iSTEM network, that encompasses the businesses around the state, and not just here in Indianapolis. You have in Indianapolis some of the big players. You have the Lilly's, the Rolls-Royce, the Dow Agro, but you also have Cummins down in Columbus, and all the ortho works and all the orthopedics up in the Warsaw area. They're from all over the state. General Electric has a huge plant. The Toyotas, the Hondas, the GMs, everybody, but those fairly high-level executives are represented at one spot, and there will be a STEM summit this fall. And I would strongly suggest getting with that and doing your presentation in front of them, because you are going to reach all of the corporations. And like you were mentioning about Subaru having that, be a great time to say, you know, some of these companies really do have this. We challenge the rest of you to start programs to do the funding. And I think you'd have more of an impact than you realize, because like's been said, coming from us, great, okay, another great idea, whatever. Coming from the students that are there, it holds probably twice or more the weight of something that we would say. So that might be one that you want to definitely look into for this fall.
How would we go about setting up something like that?
I'll give you my business card and tell you who you have to see.
We have Purdue friends here in Anderson too that can get you connected, Tori Sharp and Bob Walden, folks like that.
Did you say that was a STEM summit?
It's the iSTEM Network and Indiana Department of Education and Commission of Higher Ed. There's a bunch of them that go through together, but it's the STEM Summit. Last year they had the STEM Summit with everybody, and astronaut Pinky Nelson came and spoke at the STEM Summit. Were you at the STEM Summit? And that was a pretty high-level corporate executives and everything that have committed to the STEM program.
A student voice would be a nice thing to have there. I think it would be very welcome, and we can help you do that.
Yep. Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you one more time for coming. Appreciate it so much. These students work